Disobedience, Man's Original Virtue. Oscar Wilde. From the Soul of Man Under Socialism, 1891. The virtues of the poor may be readily admitted, and are much regretted. We are often told that the poor are grateful for charity. Some of them are, no doubt, but the best amongst the poor are never grateful. They are ungrateful, discontented, disobedient, and rebellious. They are quite right to be so. Charity they feel to be a ridiculously inadequate mode of partial restitution, or a sentimental dole, usually accompanied by some impertinent on the part of the sentimentalist to tyrannize over their private lives. Why should they be grateful for the crumbs that fall from the rich man's table? They should be seated at the board and are beginning to know it. As for being discontented, a man who would not be discontented with such surroundings, and such a low mode of life, would be a perfect brute. Disobedience, in the eyes of anyone who has read history, is man's original virtue. It is through disobedience that progress has been made, through disobedience and through rebellion. Sometimes the poor are praised for being thrifty. But to recommend thrift to the poor is both grotesque and insulting. It is like advising a man who is starving to eat less. Men should not be ready to show that he can live like a badly fed animal. He should decline to live like that, and should either steal or go on the rates, which is considered by many to be a form of stealing. As for begging, it is safer to beg than to take, but it is finer to take than to beg. Number a poor man who is ungrateful, unthrifty, discontented and rebellious, is probably a real personality, and has much in him. As for the virtuous poor, one can pity them, of course, but one cannot possibly admire them. They have made private terms with the enemy, and sold their birthright for very bad pottage. They must also be extraordinarily stupid. I can understand a man accepting laws that protect private property, and admit of its accumulation, as long as he himself is able under those conditions to realize some form of beautiful and intellectual life. But it is almost incredible to me how a man whose life is marred and made hideous by such laws can possibly acquiesce in their continuance. However, the explanation is not really difficult to find. It is simply this: misery and poverty are so absolutely degrading, and exercise such a paralyzing effect over the nature of men, that no class is ever really conscious of its own suffering. They have to be told of it by other people, and they often entirely disbelieve them. What is said by great employers of labor against agitators is unquestionably true. Agitators are a set of interfering, meddling people, who come down to some perfectly contented class of the community, and sow seed of discontent amongst them. That is the reason agitators are so abundantly necessary. Without them, in our incomplete state, there would be an advance toward civilization. Slavery was put down in America, not in consequence of action on part of the slaves, or even expressed desire on their own part that they should be free. It was put down entirely through the grossly illegal conduct of certain agitators in Boston and elsewhere, who were not slaves themselves, nor owners of slaves, nor had anything to do with the question really. And it is curious to note that from the slaves themselves they received, not merely very little assistance, but hardly any sympathy even, and when at the close of the war the slaves found themselves free, found themselves indeed so absolutely free that they were free to starve, many of them bitterly regretted the new state of things. To the thinker, the most tragic fact in the whole of the French Revolution is not that Marie Antoinette was killed for being queen, but that the starved peasant of the Vendée voluntarily went out to die for the hideous cause of feudalism. Quoted from George Woodcock's Anarchist Reader. Biographical Supplement. Born in 1854, Comrade Oscar was an Irish wordy type who enjoyed extensive success among the buggy literary and dramatic culture of later 19th century Britain. That is until they realized he didn't fit into their conception of what was normal, and they gave him 2 years hard labor for being attracted to men. After this he gave Britain and Ireland the finger and left for France, where he died destitute in 1900 aged 46. Some of his greatest works include The Picture of Dorian Gray, The importance of being earnest and the soul of man under socialism. Thanks for watching. Coming up soon, quotations from Berkman and Stirner. Stay strong, comrades. The Northern birds of prey will pay some day.